Now, the IEC announced the results of the 95 by-elections held yesterday across the country. These elections were seen as setting the stage of next year's local government elections. Speaking at the announcement of the results today at the Commission's headquarters in Centurion, IEC Vice-chairperson Janet Love says this turnout is in line with the turnout for by-elections since 2016's elections.
So to give you a national overview, the results per party of the 95 wards contested yesterday are as follows. The African National Congress retained 64 wards, lost 2 wards, and won 6 new wards. The Democratic Alliance retained 14 wards, lost 9 wards, and won 2 new wards. The Inkatha Freedom Party retained 4 wards, won 1 new ward. The Patriotic Alliance won 1 new ward. The Good Party won 1 new ward. Al-Jamaa won 1 new ward. The Vryheids Front Plus won 1 new ward. The National Freedom Party lost 1 ward. The United Front of Civics Party lost 1 ward. With regard to the economic freedom fighters, there was no change in their position insofar as ward by-elections.
Now, the ANC head of elections, Fikile Mbalula, addressed the media on the outcomes of yesterday's by-elections.
In this election, the ANC have registered overwhelming victory, in no doubt. That does not mean that we are not faced with challenges. We dubbed this election as a precursor to the 2021 election. And to us, it was a dry run. We have come out tops. We have won new wards. And we are not complacent. Our people continue to raise sharply with us issues of service delivery, which we're going to be intensifying and focusing on. But they continue to show support to their movement.
Now, joining us to dissect this is political analyst Tessa Dooms. Tessa, a very good afternoon to you. Needless to say, ANC's Fikile Mbalula, a happy camper as what the Democratic Alliance would have been following the outcome of those results.
Yeah, I think the ANC would feel that this is a good, at least facing the public, win for them, but they would also know the realities of by-elections, as is the realities with local elections in general, that we have decidedly low turnout for these elections. And we know in this election there's been a lot in the Gauteng region, where you'll see a higher turnout than the average in the Gauteng region vis-a-vis the rest of the country. And I think that calling this an overwhelming victory without thinking about the nuances of when elections are held, what the turnout is in these elections, but also the ways in which the opposition has clearly fragmented around these elections, I think needs more consideration than the ANC may be giving to the public as they announce their victory.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the numbers, the registered population for these by-elections was 605,279, but the total votes cast 190,025, about 31.39% of people actually went out to the by-elections. Do you read much into this? Are South Africans saying, I mean, if you've been listening throughout the radio in the past couple of days following up the elections, a lot of our SABC radio stations are asking people, why are you going to vote? Did you vote? And most, obviously, and the numbers show most people did not go out to vote.
Well, it does follow a trend that we've been seeing at national and provincial elections over time, where you've seen this decline in voting. I think in the last national election, we really were startled by how many millions of people didn't participate in the voting process. And I think we must never take for granted that when people decide not to participate, that it's always a matter of their choice, or it's because, of convenience or the lack thereof. Because sometimes it really is a political choice. It's a choice that they're making to say either that they don't support any of the candidates that are on the ballot, or they don't trust the electoral system. And I think it's something we must pay attention to. In the run-up to the next local government election, we would hope that more and more South Africans have faith in the system, have faith that there's somebody on the ballot that they can trust, particularly at local government level, where it's your ward councillor who's the first point of contact. We saw this year with the COVID-19 crisis, how ward councillors were almost missing from the conversation when it was actually their job to find out who the indigent people in their communities were, to make sure that people who were struggling because of a lack of access to food or social security were able to be found and helped and supported. And I do see in these elections, even with the low turnout, is that when parties, the smaller parties like the IFP, the Patriotic Alliance, and the Freedom Front Plus, when they find a designated community and they're able to rally that community around either candidates that are from that community, or they're able to just show that they've got an investment in a particular community, in a particular ward, how they can come out victorious, even when they don't have the resources to do that nationally. So the ANC has resources, but I think we're starting to see an electorate that wants people who they can trust, who they can hold accountable, and who ultimately will serve their interests. And that might be the difference in the local government elections and in 2024.
Let's speak about the numbers now. Let's speak about the political parties. You mentioned the Patriotic Alliance. You mentioned the Good Party, Al Jama'ah, won a seat. The Friars Front Plus won a new, not a seat, rather a ward. The National Freedom Party won a ward. So one could say the smaller parties, well, they're speaking to their people, in particular the PA, who have been there for a while, and this is a good victory for them, as well as the Good Party.
Absolutely. I think the DA and the EFF would do well to think about why it is that these smaller parties were able to get the seats that they did. What they didn't do is spray and pray. They didn't just go to every ward and contest strongly. They chose the wards that they thought they could do really well in. They put up candidates that clearly resonated with communities. And when you have a candidate in one of the wards in Gauteng, I think it was Ward 9, you had an independent candidate that beat out all the parties to come out tops. And so I think that is a signal that you don't necessarily have to have the reach and the money and the financial muscle to win. You need to be able to build trust with constituencies. The DA has seen a decline. The EFF is still not registering those essential just first stabs at governance at ward level. And that's saying that their national games might be strong. But when it comes to where the rubber hits the road, truly, your policy is nice when it's being spoken about at a national level, but people are clearly not trusting you to deliver the goods on the ground. And that should be a worry to the two big parties like the DA and the EFF.
The Democratic Alliance retaining 14 of their awards, losing 9. Huge losses those are. Although they gained 2 awards, I'm going to try and see if we can't get maybe a map just to try and see whilst we talk through it. Let's start in George. In George, the DA would come out with numbers 90% victories in certain wards there. And again, the Good Party in Ward 44 there, Western Cape, I think it's Ward 44, 104-04027. And the Richard John Hector from the Good Party stole that one. It's amazing how the official opposition party, the DA, has lost drastically throughout, in particular in their strongholds. What message are the people on the ground sending them? Would it have anything to do, in particular, a lot of people saying what happened now with the election of John Steenhuisen could have played a factor, and all the ramblings in the past year, 2 years or so within the DA is materializing on the ground?
Yeah, with the DA, besides the seats that were lost, there were also significant declines in their support, even in the wards where they did win. And that's a combination of a trust in the party that is waning. I think in Gauteng, you cannot undermine somebody like Moody stepping down and what impact and ramifications that would have for the DA. We must remember that the DA is more than its national leadership. It's got organizers on the ground, and you'll see where those organizers have still been given the profile, still been given the space to work, the DA has managed to retain. where you've seen those kind of internal party battles, those fights playing themselves out, the DA starting to wane. And the DA has to ask itself hard questions about its ground game. It has to ask itself who its constituencies are that it's trying to get to. I mean, Helen Zille penned something on Facebook where she spoke about the FF Plus and how the FF Plus is maintaining this kind of right-wing base. But it was clear by that statement that they were definitely contesting for that base. And so if they're contesting for a right-wing base and they're losing, if they're contesting for a progressive black majority base and they're losing, that only signals that their internal battles are starting to show and people are losing confidence in them. And while they say it will take decades to build what they purport that Mmusi Maimane lost, they also have had a year to consolidate under a leader that they've clearly given a mandate now. And if this leader is not able to do that work between now, 2021, and 2024, I think the end of the DA may actually be signaling itself.
Did Helen Zille play a part in possibly the decline? I mean, you've heard it being said, but as an analyst, what are your thoughts? Helen Zille, is she good or bad for the party, particularly if she's going to say something? You mentioned Facebook. She did mention that, look, we're in a fight, we're contesting 45 wards. A lot of people saying, you just want to fight the Freedom Front Plus, and we see the Freedom Front Plus gaining their wards. In fact, in Potchefstroom, just down the road from here, Freedom Front Plus replaced the DA in one of the wards.
Yeah, I would say that the election of Helen Zille and the bringing back of Helen Zille into the party has been a divisive force. It has caused the party to fall apart in the eyes of the public and people not really being sure what the future of the DA is. But I think it goes one step beyond that. The question about whether the DA can actually reinvent itself, whether the DA can actually appeal to a broader base of South Africans than the 20% that they've been able to do thus far, means a stepping up of gear, not reverting back to days gone by, not thinking about the past glories, but thinking about the future. Helen Zille represents the past of the party. That cannot be a contested idea. They need to be able to present the future of the party, and we're yet to see what Johnny Steenhuisen brings to the table that presents something new. For all his faults, what Mmusi Maimane did try to do with the DA is he did try to show that the DA could go down a different path. That path may not have been accepted by the voters, maybe not even by the party itself, but the DA is going to have to go through that process of finding what is the thing that will actually lock voters in, will actually expand its voter base. And right now, what it seems that they're doing is they're circling around old ideas, old leaders, old bases, and they're really not being innovative enough to really capture the imagination of a broader base of South Africans.
Tessa Dooms, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Great conversation. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. A lot to catch up on. Tessa, they're speaking about just the past by-elections that went by. A lot of people saying, we heard the Fikile Mbalula saying the ANC were the biggest winners, and the DA were the biggest losers. Patriotic Alliance picking up a ward, the Well As Good Party picking up a ward, and an independent as well picking up a ward in those by-elections.